world's biggest podcast because I've generated over 35 million views here on this YouTube channel. So today I want to share with you the 4 simple truths that allowed me to take the first steps and finally create content, and how you can use these truths to stop procrastinating and finally change your life. Truth number 1, you can't be discovered if you stay invisible. Before I was known for business content and communication content and leadership content, I started a podcast all about age gap relationships. And the reason that I did this is because I knew that I wanted to get my story out there. I knew I wanted to get comfortable speaking to an audience, and I didn't feel confident yet in talking about topics that I didn't have stats in. I was at the time 24 years old, so I didn't have all of this business acumen and this proof that I knew what I was talking about. So what did I know I could talk about? Age gap relationships. I was talking to so many women about the struggles that they had, and how many age gap relationships exist was really shocking to me. I had so much uncertainty at that time, but there is one thing that I did know. I wanted to get known. And in order to get known, I had to put myself out there. And the podcast allowed me to communicate this in a way that I could comfortably speak in a podcast microphone and look at a camera and be confident in my communication. It let me put my ideas out there, even though the ideas were far from perfect. And here's what's interesting. It let me tell the story that I wanted to tell in my own way, explaining who I am, so that people could never come back and actually use this thing that I actually had some insecurity about against me. It no longer felt like I had anything to hide because I was putting myself out there and taking away the power of anybody who was going to try to throw stones at me. You see, I see all the time that people say that they want a big career, or they want to find the right partner, or they want to build something meaningful. But then they spend all their time at home on Netflix, scrolling through Instagram, watching other people's lives on TikTok. So if you're spending all of your time consuming somebody else's content, how is anybody supposed to know that you exist? You have no ability to be discovered because you're not in the environment where discovery actually happens. It's the same thing with people who say that they want to date and find a partner, but they don't get out of their homes. But here's what people get wrong. Even when they do start creating content, no one cares to learn from or to be inspired by somebody who has a boring life. And I know that that can be hard to hear, but what they do care about is you being able to share with them something that you can actually help them with, something they can actually be inspired by. So the question isn't, should I create content? It's, what can I help people with? And if you don't have an answer yet, your first step is to get experience and get stats worth sharing. Before I was really able to confidently say that I could help business owners, I had to get stats helping business owners. You need to pick a topic and know what you're talking about. In order to do that, you have to build something, and then you learn something, and then you solve a problem, and then you document it. The second truth is that the biggest block to creating content has nothing to do with skill. It's your fear of judgment, and you are confronted with judgment as soon as you start creating content. What do people think? Are they gonna like it? Are they gonna comment? What if the post flops? And I can fully understand this place of fear. For the longest time, I was terrified that I would instantly be judged for the way that I look, for the person I decided to marry, and that I would be instantly discredited. So even if I had the greatest content and was able to share with people what I've learned, what I've done, and how smart I am, that they would just instantly discredit me. That fear almost stopped me entirely from creating content. What's wild is that if I would have let that fear dictate how I acted, I wouldn't have the business that I have today. I wouldn't have the team that I have today. I wouldn't have the purpose that I have today, because everything that we've built over the last 6 years is built off of social media and being able to communicate with people what the opportunity is in their business, how they can grow their business. So by choosing discipline instead of fear, it's actually allowed me to create the life that I could have only dreamed of a decade ago. But at the time, it was the fear of my friends, it was the fear of sounding dumb, it was the fear of not having experience that really did hold me back. What's ironic to me about this today is I still get criticized for the things that I was once fearful of. But instead of leaning into that fear and letting that fear stop me, I can read rude comments or people who completely write me off and see it for what it is. I don't have to internalize it. And I've actually created success despite that. But that doesn't mean that haters or people who are negative or people who won't ever take you seriously are all of a sudden going to be won over to your side. You just have to learn to take that fear and take the action despite the fact that you're scared of it. If half the world hated you, Would you still be willing to move forward with the things that you are passionate about, things that you want to communicate about, in order for half of the world to really appreciate the content that you put out? From my standpoint, even if 1% of the world was aligned with my point of view and I could pull them into my community, it would be worth it. I wouldn't care that 99% of people disagree, because I know who I am and I'm no longer afraid of the content that I put out. So here's what I've noticed. When you create content, you have to own who you are. You have to put a light on yourself, on your ideas, on your thoughts. And if you don't actually feel good about who you are, that feels terrifying. So when somebody attacks you for who you are, you feel uncertain of yourself instead of feeling completely confident because you know who you are. I avoided creating content for so long because I didn't like myself. And I didn't want myself to have a light on my habits, my thoughts, my behaviors, because I didn't know that I could defend them. But here's an alternative choice. You can decide that you're going to create content as a way to change those things that maybe you don't feel so great about. I used to stay up really late at night and I couldn't wake up early in the morning, and I started following this content creator who was all about waking up early and being disciplined, and I wanted to be that person, but I would constantly disappoint myself because I wouldn't wake up on time, and I wouldn't work out, and then I would make bad eating choices, and the discipline or lack thereof would just start to spiral. So by forcing myself to create content, I was like, well, I want to be the type of person that actually does have these habits and behaviors. I'm not going to lie and pretend like I have it. That's not the right way to go. Some people create content like that and they have this fictitious life. No, use content to actually force yourself to be proud of the life that you have, because if somebody was watching you all the time, you would behave differently. You would start to act like the person that you want to be and use content as the reason for you to have that level of accountability. So let's get super tactical. First, get honest with yourself about what you're actually afraid of. Is it the judgment from people who knew you before? Is it imposter syndrome? Is it perfectionism? Name the fear specifically. Then ask yourself, what is the cost of letting this fear win? What opportunities am I missing by staying invisible? When you see that inaction is costing you, it becomes easier to take action. Number 3, creating content builds trust. When my husband and I were going to meet our then mentors and future business partners, Grant and Elena Cardone, before I meet them, my first thought was, when I finally get a chance to meet them, what will they see when they look at our social media? Because if I were them, I would look at social media first. It is the modern way to vet people. So I had a website built and I made sure that our content explained who we were clearly. I wanted to build credibility through reputation before we ever sat in the same room. And it worked. We showed up with context already established that created trust. So here's what's happening. When someone consumes your content consistently, they're building trust with you over a period of time. And that is what trust is built off of. Consistency over a long period of time. This is especially important if you've made mistakes in your past, or if the frame that people see you through initially isn't accurate. For me, in general, being with somebody older than me actually didn't seem like a trustworthy thing. That's something that I was really aware of. Like, I wouldn't necessarily trust somebody who had the dynamic on the outside that we have, without people understanding more of the depth and understanding how our relationship works and what we've built together and what our dreams are. It just looks like some facade of a relationship. So it's something that I used to struggle with because I wanted people to take me seriously. But creating content gave me control. I could demonstrate that I'm smart and I could build trust without having to explain all of these nuances and almost seem like I'm defensive while at a dinner table meeting people sociably. Social media allowed me to show people what I do, what my thoughts are, and they could build trust with me because over a long period of time, I've created content consistently. And when you first meet somebody, all they see is the first interaction. They don't understand any of the depth of what your dreams are, what you want to build, what you have built, what you do every day. But social media does allow you to create that level of credibility. So think about the relationships that matter the most to your goals, which could be your clients, your employer, collaborators, mentors, whoever it is for you. Ask yourself this: what do I want them to know about me before we ever even meet? That's what your content should communicate. Make it easy for people to find you when they look you up. Because in today's world, if someone can't find you online, your online presence is sparse, it's easy to wonder why. Why are you not proud of what you've built if you're not willing to put it online? What are you hiding? What are you protecting? Remember, the presence of good content creates trust and opens doors. The last truth is that speaking online sharpens your thinking. One of the coolest things that happened through the Diary of a CEO podcast, and what I realized after I did it, is that I was put on a stage where I was asked about my reasoning and thought process behind my life's work. And this opportunity forced me to clarify my own thinking. Because imagine for a second, if you, for an hour and a half, were going to go on somebody's podcast to communicate about the things that you find important and the justifications and rationale for the way that you live your life. If you knew that you had a month to prep for that, would you change what you did over that month? Would you really question and analyze why you have certain views and opinions and either figure out ways to substantiate why you do what you do or altogether change what you do? And so you don't have to have a podcast invite on some big platform in order to start thinking about your choices like this. You could use the fact that you could create content every single day to sharpen your thoughts and your opinions and your reasons for doing things. Because as I mentioned before, if you just imagine that you had a camera with you 24/7 and that you were going to bring people inside the behind the scenes of your life, what would they actually see? And would you behave differently if you knew that you had to tell somebody, hey, this is why I'm making this decision. This is why I'm buying this investment property. This is why I show up to this job. Or instead, would you say, oh, I hate my boss and my boss is just the worst and I hate the company that I work at? Well, what's inspiring about that? If you hate the company that you work at, leave and go find a company that you're really excited about, because no one wants to sit and listen to you bitch about the place that you work. And so the idea of creating content really is this magnifying glass into the choices and decisions that you've made in your life. It's a beautiful thing, because if you really took more seriously the choices that you made and you felt more confident with those choices and you became sharper with the reasons you do things and the reasons you say no to other things, you would live a better life. So it's not just about this facade of content creation. I oftentimes think that this does get confusing for people. They think that it's just this beautiful life that people live, and there are lots of people who create facades online. But if you, for your content, could actually create visibility into the life that you've built because you're proud of it, you should do that, because more people need to see people's real lives where they make hard decisions and they do disciplined things every single day as a way to inspire everyday people, instead of posting some beautiful exterior image that isn't really the realities of what most people have to deal with every single day, what most people have to work through, the considerations that they have to make. I want you to get better at this. So start by picking one topic that you want to be known for. It could be productivity, relationships, career strategy, whatever matters to you that would be a core of the content that you're creating. And then what you're going to do is you're going to create a piece of content every single day explaining your perspective on that topic. The act of articulating your thoughts forces clarity. Pay attention to where you stumble, where you're uncertain, where you realize that you don't actually know what you're talking about. Those areas should be sharpened. And over time, when you're consistently doing this, you'll notice that your thinking becomes sharper, not just in content, but in every conversation you have, every decision that you make, every problem that you solve. This is how content creation makes you better at everything, not just better at creating content. If creating content is something you've been putting off, these 4 truths are your permission to start. And if you want to understand how to think and communicate like people who are